Welcome back, everybody, to the Birdies and Bourbon Show. We are extremely excited today to have Mr. Mark Immelman on with us, host of On the Mark podcast. Mark, thanks so much for coming on. How you doing?
I'm great. Please don't call me Mister. When you start talking about Mister, I start looking for my dad, and I'm on the doorstep of 50 years old. So already there's this little thing. Well, I wouldn't call it a crisis, but there's a thing going on. So let's keep it Mark, okay?
Yep, not a problem there. So I wasn't going to go there, but you brought it up. So
Okay.
you're hitting the 5-0 pretty soon. Is we got a Champions Tour coming up in your future?
Oh, heck no. I do some of my best work with a microphone in my hand. I still teach a lot of golf. I'm still the director of golf, the golf coach at Columbus State University. So, mine has always been, I was a good player as a young guy, but there was always this teaching sort of a bent to who I was. And was I good enough to perhaps play on tour? Probably. Am I happy that my road forked and went in this direction? Absolutely. So yeah, big 5-0. I think I'm like wine. I'm just maturing and getting even more smooth now.
Awesome. Hey, so before we get started, you want to tell folks where they can find you at?
Of course. Well, look, markimmelman.com is probably the best way to go. And with my funky accent, that's MarkImmelman.com. You can find the podcast On the Mark there. You can find all of my Instagram and all of the Twitter stuff, and that's sort of the landing spot. But I'm on social media. There's a Facebook page and the podcast. If you just go wherever you get your pods, just go and search On the Mark Golf, and you'll find it. And it's I wouldn't call it a labor of love, because as a young instructor, I always wanted to sort of be known, and I was successful. Don't get me wrong, but if you weren't on the front cover of the Golf Digest or whatever, you sort of weren't really known. And then this thing came about, and I wanted to give a voice to, people you might not have heard of, people who are very insightful, people who can help anyone. And then also growing up in South Africa, what I learned from the game was from books, like books by, I felt like I was best friends with Bobby Jones and the Golf Digest or whatever it was whenever we got this thing. So for the folks in the other parts of the globe that don't have access to the great golf instructors, I wanted to make them available to folks. So it was sort of a multi-pronged approach, which has grown a life of its own. So it's kind of crazy how the whole thing has panned out in 4 short seasons.
Yeah. So speaking of South Africa, so you grew up there. I think your dad was a commissioner of a tour over there. Mm-hmm. Was it so outside of that, was it a challenge? I've never been to South Africa, and I'm not sure what the golf climate is over there. Obviously, we see a lot of South Africans on the tour. But was it hard to access and to play golf growing up?
Certainly was, but judging the Cal by your setup, you'd fit into South Africa just fine. You would make the perfect golf partner. Now, in terms of, there are lots of golf courses. We're a very sporty nation, South African folks. You spend time outside. There's not as much television as what there is in the United States. So folks keep themselves entertained socially, and golf is a great way to do that. It's expensive. It always has been, as it is everywhere else. And
sure,
especially now, sadly, golf is more expensive over there. But there's still a number of public golf courses, like the place we grew at, my brother and I, down in Somerset West. They were always very accommodating to junior golfers. And I remember when I began back in the day, it was like $1 to play as many holes as you could during a day. And there were kids running around there all of the time because, like, my parents found out this was perfect babysitting during the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
You send your kid to the golf course and they can just hang out there. And so golf is, a lot of people play. Ernie Els, Gary Player is our legend, and Bobby Locke is our legend, and then Nick Price and those sorts of guys. But Ernie Els was kind of the guy that brought the golf to the people, and he spurned a generation, if you will. Ernie and I are about the same age. He's a little older than me. And so a lot of folks are into golf because of Ernie. A lot of the South African fans still ask about Ernie all of the time because he's synonymous with golf. And so golf is popular. A lot of folks play, a lot of social golf, obviously. But sadly, the real luxurious venues, or those bucket list places over there, I hesitate to say they're out of reach for the common guy, which is sad for me, and it's maybe something that in another life I'd like to try and address a little bit. But golf is popular there. But to your question, for me it was easy to get into just because of the accessibility of the golf club, and it's a great place to be. It's a great place to learn, and it's again, like I said, my mom could drop us off there in the morning and pick us up there in the evening, and
Right.
there's a day.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to stay on the South African theme for just a second. I do want to get into the U.S. Open, and I want to talk about some of the things you've been doing on course, and maybe not specifically you, but maybe some of the events they've been having. But as it relates to South Africa or South Africans, and the ties to wine. And we can start down the laundry list of golfers that are that have a winery or have their own labels. So what's the connection there? I mean, other than the obvious, right? I mean, you've got good grapes there, but I mean, what's the draw there?
Well, I think you have to sort of take a step back in history too. South Africa's founding was a function of the spice trade, like way back in the days of the Crusades, was ruined. So, the Portuguese and the British and all the folks that were sort of dominating this, the Dutch, they had to find a way to get to the east. And so they got on their ships and they sailed south. And so you had to round the tip of Africa, which is a trip. And, scurvy and all that sort of stuff was a deal. So Cape Town, where I'm from, is just a natural port. And so they fortified, they made camp there. And then the Dutch, was founded by the Portuguese, which brings the cuisine down there is off the charts. And so that's already why wine is a great idea. But the Portuguese brought some influence, and they brought in some Malay people. So there's that kind of influence over there. And then the Dutch followed them around, and the Dutch sort of settled the place a lot more. It wasn't just a port. And so the Dutch folks, I think back in history, wine was what the elite folks did. And so the Dutch tried to make wine, and that was a bad experiment. Because down where I'm from is very exposed. You get high winds, warm summers, cold winters. A beautiful spot, but if you don't know what you're doing, it can really sort of ruin things. And so they brought a number of French people down there called the French Huguenots. And they brought these French folk in, and apparently the story goes, they looked at this corner that's just about an hour's trip outside of Cape Town. And they saw this corner in the mountains there, because Cape Town is like mountains and sea. That's what it is, kind of like Big Sur in California. And they looked at this spot and they're like, this is like Bordeaux. Everything about the topography, the soil, the climate, the influence of the maritime over there. And so they called it Franche Hoek, the Dutch people did, which is the French corner. And they started making wine, and next thing, this wine was like the best French stuff you ever had. And so that was how wine came about. And then the Dutch people used the wine to make brandy. And so there's a huge brandy influence over there. There's huge wine influence, and all of this stuff is just about an hour away from the sea. So in terms of wine growing and alcohol growing, it's it's sort of in our DNA, I guess, because our settlers did this sort of thing. This is how they farmed initially. So there was wine and agriculture and that sort of deal. And then when the country expanded north, the Cape, where I'm from, was always just wine country. And so sort of that's how it came about. And I grew up in the winelands. Outside of Cape Town, there's these little towns dotted around the place. And Somerset West, where we're from, is like right at the foot of the mountains in the winelands. Nice. In fact, Simon van der Stel, who was the first governor of the Cape, he set up his homestead there, called Vergelegen, which in Dutch means it lies far away. And this place is still one of South Africa's like great wine estates. And so, I mean, this is all we know. So,
yeah, just in your DNA, I guess, right?
A function of who I am, I guess.
keeps you moving. Yeah. So Mark, is there an Immelman Brothers label coming out soon?
I'm going to have to rely on Trevor for that. He's got a bit more disposable income than I do. No, it was Ernie that said to me, you said, if you want to make $1 million in wine, you got to start with 2 million.
That's true.
Because Ernie's wine, his wine farm is just from my family home. It's probably 20 minutes driving, if that.
Oh, wow.
Really?
So he's down there, and Retief Goosen's got the Goose down there, which has got a magnificent Shiraz. David Frost was like a mentor to me. He was the first one to foray into wine. A lot of his wines are great, and of course, Ernie is Ernie. And his wines have, I guess, just got more exposure than the rest because of who he is as a
Right.
Hall of Famer. And so in terms of me having a wine label, no, maybe one day. I've always said to my wife, I want a coffee shop that doubles as a wine bar in the afternoon. So maybe when things slow down, I'll have wine and coffee, but I won't have my own label now.
Yeah, nice. Well, Dan always a question we like to ask folks. Dan, usually I'm jumping the gun on this, but
he's excited, Mark. He's really excited.
How do you take your coffee?
Well, because I've got this dad belly thing happening, right? I'm trying to be as keto, whatever it is, as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to look. Tracy, my wife, and I, we love everything Italy. So we love a cappuccino. And a good latte is tremendous. And I used to be milk with coffee, but now because I'm sort of keto and trying to be in shape, I'm fasting until midday or whatever it is. So I just have it black.
Okay.
And that used to suck initially, but now I find that, and I was taught this by a coffee shop guy in town here where I'm in Columbus. He put different coffees in front of me, black, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
"You're into wine. Taste the difference here."
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've gotten into that mindset and got beyond the decorating the coffee with sugar and milk and stuff, I actually appreciate black coffee, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying good beans, for sure. I mean, it's not, if you're going and getting the the already ground in the tin on the shelf, you're not going to get a lot out of that other than brown water. But if you're getting good beans, I mean, you can definitely pull some stuff out of there.
That's something that we talked to people about, Mark, and we thought you'd had that kind of answer because we knew you were into wine. And generally, when people are into wine and they're tasting it properly and doing the nose and the palate and all that kind of stuff, you can do that with the beans as well. And it looks like you found your niche there, and it's great for you considering you are on the wine side or whatnot, that you can do that with coffee, and it has the benefits from a health perspective, not having to put the sugar and everything in.
Yeah, well, look, from the health perspective, I'm not Phil Mickelson just yet. He's drinking the stuff out of a Yeti cup on the golf course. But you're right. It's amazing. And I guess this is a lesson in life where if you just have an open mind and you're prepared to try something, you never know where your palate might progress. Because if you had caught me 3 years ago and said, you're going to be drinking black coffee in the morning, I would have said, are you nuts? I'll drink a coffee. I'll drink a cappuccino at 11 o'clock in the evening.
Sure.
But now all of a sudden, black coffee has become my thing. Now, when I go to a restaurant or if I'm somewhere, will I have a cappuccino? Absolutely. But the black thing it's been sort of eye popping, to be honest with you.
Yeah, nice. Speaking of restaurants, so you were in Atlanta, a couple of weeks ago for the Tour Championship. And I'm a fan of this restaurant. I saw on your Instagram you had posted you made a visit to 10 Degrees South. So I'm sure that's a regular stop for you when you're in town.
Yeah. Well, look, all South Africans. Justin Anthony over there at 10 Degrees South, and he's got a couple other places. It's just tremendous. And whereas we're American now, we became citizens in 2016. The African dust never gets out from in between your toes. And so when you can go to a place that's got the taste of home and sort of the ambiance and the atmosphere and just the sense of, because a restaurant experience in South Africa is a night's worth. You don't go in there and eat and leave. You go in there and you have a few cocktails to start, and then you have a appetizer or two, and it's very family style always, and then you'll eat, and then after eating, then there's dessert and aperitifs and stuff like that. So you go to a South African house for dinner, and it's about a 4-hour event. Okay?
Oh, wow.
And so you go to 10 Degrees South, and they're not trying to turn tables over there. If you just want to sit and chat and just kind of commune, it's the perfect place to be. So whenever we are able, I'm in Columbus, Georgia, but whenever we're able, we'll try and make a trip because the food is spectacular and just the atmosphere feels like home.
Yeah, so you posted a picture of, I guess, the entree that you had there. And I think you'd put it in like your story. So, it kind of disappears after some time. So what was that? Do you recall?
I had lamb chops because my wife and I, you can set your wristwatch and us ordering lamb wherever we go. But it was a friend of mine. He had South African bobotie, which is like
Yep.
a shepherd's pie with a Malay twist. And then another friend had curry, because where Durban, where my wife Tracy is from, is up the east coast of South Africa. And there's a huge Indian influence over there. So lots of curry and that sort of stuff. But Durban curry, they have it with a thing they call sambals. And sambals is like condiments. Like you have banana sliced on there and coconut. And so imagine Indian curry with those sorts of things, which adds like a sweet to the spicy. So the one guy had Durban curry, which he loved. The other guy had bobotie, which is like shepherd's pie with a sort of a Malay spicy twist to it. Has like ground beef and a few vegetables in there, and then like the toppings ordinarily are like mashed potatoes or something.
Yeah, I hadn't been there in some time. I got to get back up there. It looked really awesome.
Incidentally, bobotie was what my brother served at the Champions Dinner at the Masters.
Oh, really?
Very cool.
Yeah, when he hosted the dinner after victory, that was the meal, and apparently I hear it was pretty well received.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you're probably thinking, what in the hell did I get myself into? We've been going here for several minutes, and we really haven't talked any golf. But I just
right
wanted
up my alley, man.
Well, I mean, it's interesting stuff. I mean, obviously, we did a little research on you before you came on, and following you on social media. I mean, it's like, yeah, we could just talk the whole hour and probably not even get into golf. I don't know if the listeners necessarily want to go down that path, but sometimes it's got to be about us, man.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Well, look, well, I've always believed golf is sort of a microcosm of life, right? And we talk about having an open mind and an open palate. If you approach golf with eyes wide open, and you understand that when you get on the golf course, I guess the coach in me is coming out now, that you're going to be hit with sensory overload no matter where you're playing, and what your job is to be aware of everything, understand what's crucial, and make decisions accordingly. So in a funny sort of a way, there's this synergy between what life is and what a round of golf is like.
Yeah, or the parallels. I mean, to your point. I mean, if you look at it in that sense, and if you're golf minded, I mean, everybody's life minded. I mean, you just kind of, if you again open mindedness, you can definitely find the parallels between the two. So, into the coaching realm. So, we've talked. We've had quite a few coaches or instructors on.
Okay.
And we always we tend to go down the road of, and everybody's doing it, right? I mean, such a drastic change. I guess there's two things. I mean, you look at like if you've seen the picture of Phil from 2006, and then the picture of Phil from 2020, right? And the guy's just he's playing good golf still. Swing speeds have maybe increased, right? They definitely haven't decreased for him. And then the opposite of that, you take someone if you look at DeChambeau. 5 or 6 years ago, and a picture of 2020, he's done the exact opposite, right? I mean, he's kind of gained all the weight that Phil lost.
Yeah.
And then, his weight increase has increased his swing speeds, or at least that's what he's touting or tying it to. So are you kind of, what's the difference there? I mean, what's the break on that?
Well, I saw the funniest meme. This is an aside, but it's along these lines where some guy, maybe it was a tweet or whatever, and he said, after watching Bryson play, I'm going to go home, eat pizza for 30 days straight, and tell my wife it's in an effort to improve my golf. But here's the thing. I guess it's best encapsulated by a conversation I had with Gary Woodland on the golf course. I know time blurs, but it was here since we returned from the COVID lockdown. And Gary Woodland's lost like 30 pounds and is in fantastic shape. And so I asked him about it because Bryson was playing alongside. All right. So I said to him, Gary, I got Bryson that's picked up 50 pounds and you that shed 30. What's the story? And he said, you know what? You just got to do what you got to do to be able to bring out your best. And so I said, well, do you feel better for it? And he said, yeah, I find at the end of the day, I'm not as worn out. I find at the end of the day, just those niggles, those aches and pains aren't as prevalent because, with weight loss comes, less inflammation, and that stuff is dangerous. And so I guess my answer to it is, if you believe that you've got to pick up or get stronger and do whatever to hit the ball farther, and you believe implicitly in what you're doing, go for it. But by the same token, I always approach golf and instruction from a very holistic point. And I'm here to say to you that most of us could afford to shed a few pounds a la Woodland and we'll probably turn out better because we'll move faster, we'll be more healthy, because in the end, the thing that I'm always looking for every golfer, whether you're a PGA Tour guy or some beginner, is just being injury free.
Sure.
And my hope for all PGA Tour players and all competitive golfers is to go through your career sans injury. So the main thing is to believe in what you're doing. The main thing is to understand that it's not some magic elixir. You can't suddenly lose weight and get better, but you do stack the odds in your favor. Or if you Bryson, by getting bigger and doing all these exercises that he has, he's identified that power off the tee is how he's going to improve. And so he's all in. So my advice to whoever listening to this is, whatever you decide, be all in. Don't sort of go in with one foot saying, well, I'm going to try this. You got to dive right in there. And if you eventually figure out, well, this is not doing it, then you modify your approach.
Yeah. Good insight there for sure. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go in a direction, then I'll pull it back. But you mentioned since the comeback from COVID, and I thought one of the really interesting things that happened, so for a good period of time, golf was the only live sport on TV.
Yeah.
And, typically or before pre-COVID.
Please excuse my dog barking outside. Yeah, he's
okay.
going bananas about something.
Yeah, I thought that was Dan again. I was texting him. So pre-COVID, the Wednesdays were reserved for the pro-ams, right? And obviously with social distancing, et cetera, not allowing people on the course, that went away. And then, they started kind of plugging in these the little charity events, 9-hole charity events in the afternoon. It looked like, and we enjoyed watching you on, I'm not going to say all, because I probably didn't watch all of them, but I definitely enjoyed you on the ones that I did watch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how was that received by the players? Because I know that, I think everybody's been pretty outspoken in they don't really want to be mic'd up while they're playing in tournament, right? And for various reasons.
Yeah.
But, in that charity event, it's definitely, there's money on the line. It's for a good cause, et cetera. But, you've got kind of some closer access than you would have. So what's the appetite for something like that to continue?
You know what? I think it's a great idea because, and I'm taking the 36,000 foot view over here,
yep.
where, you get together, you get a number of golf pundits together, and the first thing they're always talking about is growing the game, right? And you grow the game by just exposing different people to it. So one of them I was involved with here in Atlanta, you got Jerome Bettis, NFL running back,
Yep.
and you got Vince Carter,
Yep.
one of the great NBA players of all time. So when Vince's fans see this and they see golf, they're like, okay, this is real. That's kind of what Tiger did. And when the football players see, hey, yes, Jerome, the bus, who actually played really well, man, maybe this is something I can look into. So from that point of view, I thought it was great. But with a PGA Tour player, they get the fact that they're a charitable organization, and all of them have their own charities that they support. And
right.
The tour as a rule, that was just to sidetrack a little bit. That was one of the biggest things that all the folks from the tour I spoke to, and this is the executives, when they were locked down, they kept on referencing the towns that they weren't going to, because bringing a PGA Tour event there just did so much for the local economy, and then did so much for the local charities, and all the beneficiaries were now suffering too. So there was this huge ripple effect from being locked down. And now you've got a novel way with these things of still raising money for charity, so the charitable initiatives are still benefiting. And then the PGA Tour player has that mindset. So from that point of view, those things were massively successful, and they were hugely entertaining because, like you say, you got two non-golf people mic'd up. Like in Minneapolis, they had, I'm drawing a blank now. He's an actor. My wife thinks he's hugely sexy.
Oh yeah,
Josh Duhamel.
Duhamel, yeah. I would never have got that, but you got Josh Duhamel, and then he comes on, and so it's a different thing. So you're mixing these genres. There's the synergy between everything. Charity wins, and it's a way for the PGA Tour player to also widen their footprint a little bit. So does it continue in the future? I don't know. If we stay in the same protocols that we currently are, I would expect it would.
Right.
But the pro-am still, because there's a large part of the the sponsorship of a player or the sponsorship of an event is the warm and fuzzy of it. You could put your penguin logo on Immelman and, that gets something. But when I go and hang out with some of Penguin's guests, and I give them golf tips, and I tell them a story or two, there's added value to that. So from that point of view, the Pro-Am will never go away, because you've got 120 guests that get to play golf with some of the greats of all time.
Right.
That's a bucket list thing, right? I mean, playing a great golf course is one thing, but playing a great golf course alongside Tiger Woods, well, now you're checking all of the boxes. So is it great now? Yes. Will it continue? Hopefully. Will the Pro-Am go away? Don't think so.
Oh, it's good news. I was bringing that up because I was going to ask for an invitation after we get done recording. So.
You got to talk to people way above my pay grade for that one.
All right. So I don't know, Dan, you want to do anything before we get to the U.S. Open?
Well, Mark, you are feet on the ground. You have any talk about stories without fans there? You've been feet on the ground behind some of these groups or whatnot. Were there any favorites that you were behind that was like, man, that was a ton of fun that day, that stick out to you?
I can probably say all of them, because this time after, or this time returning to golf, to be a part of that CBS show at the first one back, that was exhilarating. I mean, Jim Nance he's called and seen it all. Mm-hmm. And for Jim Nance to be on a Zoom call with a group of us before we would head to Fort Worth to say, look, this could be the most significant broadcast we ever do, when this guy's called Final Fours and Super Bowls and Masters, I was like, whoa. And so we got there and it was just so different. No one expected what was going on. And we had Cruz Spittle over the show. So it was crazy from that point of view. But the first one in Fort Worth, I was calling Morikawa coming down the stretch. And I'd been beating the Colin Morikawa drum for a long time, okay? Mm-hmm. And all
rightfully
of a sudden,
so.
Yeah. Well, this was even from when he graduated college.
Okay.
I made some quip on a show one time. I got absolutely skewered on social media for it. I was having this moment of clarity, right? And so Morikawa was in the show, and he hit the shot with a 6-iron to about 6 feet. Perfectly flighted, just majestic. And I'd seen numbers from when he was in college showing that on launch monitor data, his proximity with a 6-iron, or his dispersion with a 6-iron, was better than the average PGA Tour pro's dispersion with a 9-iron, I think it was.
Wow.
So you knew this kid was legit, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd been shouting about this. And then they have this thing where they set it all up, and they played it the week before on CBS, I believe it was. And they went through the group of us, Baker Finch, Nobilo, me. So who do you think is going to play well? And I hit them, because they're all going Rory and the sort of the names. And I hit them with Morikawa. And Baker Finch goes, that's a good pick. And then turns out Colin now climbs up the leaderboard, is in contention, but for a crazy miss on 18 wins the thing. Mm-hmm. So that was memorable, being the first one back. Calling Webb Simpson to a win at Hilton Head, where he just went bananas over the final, I don't know how many holes it was. That was lots of fun. Being in Dublin, Ohio for 2 weeks for the Morikawa victory, and then for the memorial thereafter with Rahm winning and getting to number one. That was memorable because it's Jack's place.
Sure.
Not having fans was kind of crazy. But I think just the overall thing, if you had to ask me what the big takeaway was, I'd almost say that we can't pat the PGA Tour on the back enough for what they did. Mm-hmm. One, for just being resolute in the fact that we are getting back into this, because at the second event, they had a couple positive tests, COVID tests, and most of the folks in the media were screaming for the thing to shut down again. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the tour just stuck by their guns. They're like, we believe in our policy. We're going to do the right thing. These guys are professionals. We are going ahead. And now to look back on this, now all the folks who were pointing fingers are going, they went 12 straight weeks with like 11 positive cases or something.
Yep.
And if you had said that to me, I would have said, you're a nutcase. Right. But there was so much that was being learned through the whole time too. So I think, looking back on the whole thing, when I'm 60, God willing, or whatever, I will say 2020 and what the PGA Tour did in this comeback was monumental. It was such a big effort, and they can't get enough praise for what they did.
I mean, the execution side is one thing, but just having having the gall to actually take that chance, because I mean that is like truly, I mean, make or break, right? I mean, if that thing goes the other way, it's like, I mean, it's not an "I told you so" moment. I mean, it's like ripping people apart.
Well, that's the thing, and the tour has had some fantastic leaders. And Dean Beeman, obviously, he was kind of the grandfather, and Tim Finchem, but Jay Monahan. And I was at the Players Championship for PGA Tour Live, and I'll never forget. I mean, Thursday evening, we were at dinner with my colleagues and a couple of rules officials. And COVID, the news had just started spreading, and I was on the course. I had the John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Brooks Koepka group, and walking down 14 fairway, Rory sort of looks at me and he goes, "How about this? The NCAA basketball being cancelled?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's crazy. Who knows what's going on over here?" And it was all this new stuff. But that evening, we're having dinner and we're planning for the next day's show.
Sure.
And I'm walking back to the hotel, and I get this call from the folks at CBS HQ, who I just do some work from, and they're like, "Can you get on?" And this is 10:30 in the evening. I'm like, "For what? You've done the recap of the show." And the guy goes, "Well, you hadn't heard they've canceled the tournament." And I was like, "Serious?" So we do the show, and the next morning, I'll never forget packing up in my hotel room on a Friday morning to drive home. And I had Jay Monahan's press conference on there. And he was honestly made for this time. And I texted him afterwards and I said, "Commissioner, you were made for this moment, and you dealt with this with compassion, with leadership, but there was this human element to him."
Sure.
And how he looked honestly distraught that they were having to cancel this event. And you could see he was like, "Well, we're going to do the right thing, but we don't know what the future holds," because they hadn't canceled the next events just yet.
Right.
And so, through it all, looking back on this whole thing, his leadership and just how he dealt with the whole thing too was a case study in servant leadership to me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Nice. All right, so I'm going to spin us in a different direction now. Let's get to it's a big week for us, big week in the world of golf. So the U.S. Open, it's the I think it's noted as maybe the best field ever, given that
every tournament screams that every week.
So I guess first question: have you played Winged Foot?
No.
Okay.
Honestly, for a guy in golf, I haven't played very many golf courses. I've been to a lot of great courses, but no, I have not. I have not, unless I'm losing my mind, played golf in the New York area. So this is a shameless plug for anyone listening. If you want to have me to play golf in New York somewhere, I'd love to join you.
Nice.
Yeah, he's bringing a twosome, by the way.
3 of us. Come on.
Unless Dan Dan doesn't play golf. I'm just kidding. So I was watching the interviews the other day, and one that really stuck out. So I guess with the from the broadcast side and watching, everybody's talking about how this is going to be shot maker's course, right? It's fairways and greens, which I mean, that's kind of golf in general, right? If you hit fairways and greens, it's going to work out pretty good for you. But the one that kind of stuck out for me, and everybody was asking, well, what's Bryson going to do? And, and his MO coming back is, he's like, "Hey, I'm just going to hit it as far as I can, find it, then I'm going to hit it on the green." And they interviewed him, and, he pretty much gave me my line right there, because that's pretty much what he said. What do you think is going to happen there? Is that if you were coaching, and I may ask this of a few other players, obviously you don't have to share, but if you're coaching, and I think the player's going to do what the player's going to do, I suppose. I mean, there's a team and there's probably a quorum that's going to give them some guidance, but and maybe you answered this earlier when you're like, just believe in what you're doing. But I mean, is that mentality going to work at a place like Winged Foot?
Well, here's the thing about power, and I guess I'll preface my observations with the fact that golf is a game of probability, and you're just trying to stack the odds in your favor. That's what you're doing. Now, most times, the best laid plans are laid to waste, right? Or the best made plans are laid to waste.
Sure.
But if you're hitting it long off the tee, you have the odds in your favor, because out of rough especially, and the fairways this week are averaging about the 25 yards across thing, which is narrow for anyone playing, even the accurate guys. You are closer to the green. You'll be hitting less clubs, so you can get the ball out of that rough easier. So the chances of getting the ball to the green are improved. I'd rather hit a wedge out of the rough than a 5-iron out of the rough. That's just logical, right?
Right.
So from that point of view, what Bryson's doing, there's merit to it because he's able to. But the way Winged Foot stacks up to me is like, you look at the last time that you had a US Open there, Jeff Ogilvy wins, and Jeff Ogilvy is one of the great chippers and pitchers of all time. And he's kind of the guy who can recover well. Now he can hit it, but he's not long like Phil, who was in contention.
Right.
You had Colin Montgomery, who was also part of the storyline, whose game is predicated more on precision and accuracy. And Jim Furyk was in the storyline too there, and his game was always also more precision and accuracy. So you had 4 different contenders or different types of games that were all able to thrive at Winged Foot, which makes it a great course. But the whole thing about the place to me is the length, certainly. But if it stays firm like everyone's screaming, you can get the ball rolling down those bent fairways and it'll go forever.
Right.
I mean, quickly, I did my nut when Tiger made his return from golf to golf at the Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And the Memorial jacked because they were going to basically dig up the golf course and redo the place for next year's Memorial right after this year's Memorial, 2020. Right. I mean, the place was like an ice skating rink. And the wind was blowing across the fairways, and the greens were firm. And Tiger was wily, just the guile of the man. He was just caressing drivers out there that were hitting like the 280 range and roll 40. Sure. And he'd still have a scoring club in his hand, but from the fairway. But then you get pundits that are jumping onto ShotLink data, and they're like, well, Tiger's swing speed's only 111 miles an hour. He's clearly not well. I'm like, Tiger is just doing what Tiger's going to do to get the ball in the hole, right? So that's where, like Winged Foot, you're going to hear a bunch of folks saying, well, it's so long. Yes, it's long. But if you get the ball going on those fairways, you're going to be fine. I feel like the major test still is on the greens around there. And Jeff Ogilvy proved it. And there's so many humps and hollows. And so I feel like even though you're a precision iron player, you're going to have one that gets on the wrong side of a slope. And you're going to have one of those sorts of putts where 3-putt avoidance will be a big deal. I think lag putting will be a big deal. I think shot placement will be a big deal, because not every 15-footer is the same. 15 feet above the hole, breaking with 5 feet worth of break versus 15 feet straight up the hill, those are 2 different putts. So as I look at this golf course and what I've seen so far, now again, I have not been on the premises and I haven't spoken to anyone there. Mm-hmm. But just from my overall assessment, I feel like power is an advantage, but I still feel like getting the ball onto the green in the right place is going to be the major calling card. And then you better have some gumption about you around the greens and find a way to get down into. And Bob Jones, who won his US Open there, he was always credited with saying the key to golf was turning 3 strokes into 2. And I feel like doing that around the greens there is going to be probably the biggest calling card.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned shot links or TrackMan, or there's numerous things out there today.
Get me on my pedestal now.
Wind him up and let him go. Uh-huh. Well, so I guess in being at Columbus State, you've got new players coming in every year, right? So I guess twofold. One is, what's and people that listen to you may already know this, but we'd like to hear it on here. So what's your take on that? And is it data and analytics, or is it, watching and feel? And then is there, a right time and a right place for it? And is there too much of it? So it's kind of 3-part question, but that'll get us there.
This is what I know. The great players. By the way, I'm jealous of you topping up. I'm silently correcting your grammars. The great players, they use everything at their disposal. They will use fitness. They will use mental and emotional training. They will use swing instruction. They will use short game instruction. They will use data analytics. And they use everything. And there's not one... Well, every player fights this. You mustn't allow one of these points of information to hold more precedence over the other. Mm-hmm. The problem is that every golfer has 1 or 2 weaknesses, and the better you get, the more you become aware of the weaknesses, because as you look through the golfer's progression, think back to when you first started, right? You hit a bunch of bad shots, and when you hit the good shot, this is like the best thing ever. And you live in your good shots, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so the bad golfers essentially got a little bit better in attitude about improvement than the good golfer does, because then the better you become, the more lower scores are a function of getting rid of the odd bad shot. So you start to focus more on the failures than what you do on the successful ones. Most golfers will hit a fantastic drive and they'll pick up the tee and go, supposed to do that. And then as soon as they miss something, they're like, wasn't supposed to do that. I'm a failure.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Right.
And I learned this from Larry Myers when I worked with him. He goes, if I'm going to own my bad shots, I have to own my good shots too. So to your question, I'm sort of sidetracked a bit, but I'll get back there. The great golfers use everything. Now, like I said to you, not every 15-footer is the same.
Sure.
So just looking at data and just throwing a strokes gained answer to the thing, that's intellectually lazy in my behalf. Now, I've got huge respect for Mark Brody. He's been on my show. The information that he puts out is used by everybody. And it's a great way to compare yourself to fields. And it's so good that it's now coming into the amateur market, the regular golfers market.
Right.
But still, if you're looking at data all of the time, I'll tell you this for free. Dustin Johnson, current world's number one, he is not gazing at strokes gained stuff after rounds. You play the game by feel. It's a scientific game, but the real sweet spot, in my opinion, is where the science and the art of it intersect. So yes, do I use launch monitors? Heck yes, I've got 3, okay? Flight scope, different models. We can move these things around. Do I use statistical analysis? Absolutely. But do I understand that there's a place for everything? Sure. There's a place when statistics go out of the window. Right. When you are standing on the final fairway, this is a Mike Furyk thing, Jim's dad, longtime coach. I was a young instructor still, and Jim was playing a practice round with one of my clients. And so on about the 14th hole, I plucked up the courage to ask Furyk, because I looked in his bag and only his 8-iron had a lead strip on the back of it. All of the others weren't. And I'm like, Jim, really? And he said, well, that one feels different to the rest. And this was the perfect segue for me to go, you can feel the difference, right? And he said, and then I looked at Mike and I'm like, I credit you guys for remaining true to what Jim does. And Mike goes, and Jim agreed. He goes, we are just getting him to a place where on the 13th, 14th, whatever hole, on the final round of the US Open, if he's standing up there trying to hit a cut 6-iron, he hits a cut 6-iron, no matter what it looks like. So you see, there's that approach where understanding that sometimes the science goes away. Right. When you're standing on the 18th green and you've got the putt to win the money off your buds, you're not thinking about the fact that your negative strokes gain something, if your statistics say so.
Yeah,
you're like,
sure.
I've got to pluck up the courage and knock one down here. So you see, there's more to it. So back to where I began. Yes, it's great stuff. Statistical analysis is awesome, and it's opened up a lane that is empowering golfers to make smart decisions on what they've got to work on. But trust me, the great golfers, they'll take that stuff and put it right where it belongs when it's time to get out there and play. So they use everything, and I would advocate that everyone listening to this does the same thing.
Yeah, and is that so? As a coach, is that a shared responsibility across the team, or is the coach kind of taking the role in that and making sure that those elements are being utilized, and I won't say equally, but proportionately to what the need is?
That is a super question, and I'll be honest, I don't know the exact answer to that. Because it's kind of generic, for people it could be different. Like right. certain players, and I'll talk to the tour because I work out there. Certain players are way more involved with the research. Bryson. And then certain players are way less involved with the research. DJ.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, but within each team, I'm sure there's the tip of the spear. But the real deal is the tip of the spear in the end is the dude that's got his hands on the rubber end of the club, because you're the guy who's hitting the ball in the end. So I'm sure there are teams where responsibilities are shared, and I'm sure there are teams where there aren't. What the key for the golfer is, because again, it ends with the golfer, the buck stops with him or her. It's for the golfer to arrange stuff in an environment that best suits the situation.
Yeah.
Very nice, man. Very nice. So any predictions? What do you got this week, Mark?
You know what? You can't look past. Frank Nobilo said this to me one time because I'd never really thought about it this way. But he said to me, if you look on the PGA Tour, the guys who are contending are the guys that are putting best of the guys who are ball striking the best. Because in the end, it's always a putting contest. But you can't. No great putter in the world is going to navigate his way around the fact that you're playing from the trees all of the time.
Right.
Playing out of the rough. And this week, I don't think you can habitually play out of the rough and contend. I think that's a short lifespan because 4 rounds is going to be grueling.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of looking at the guys who are hitting the ball well, who are confident, that are putting pretty well right now. And the two names that are springing to the forefront is Dustin Johnson. I mean, have you watched this guy play golf lately? Okay. and John,
that's for sure.
And John Rahm too. I think the way they both drive the ball, I think Rahm has a slight edge around the greens over DJ. But DJ just has that immeasurable, that confidence right now that is off the charts. And he actually spoke to that in pre-tournament comments. He said, I'm really happy with where I am. The game feels good and I'm confident. And confidence is that thing we strive for, but no one knows how to get. Crazy.
Yeah, I'd like to say we can see it out there on the course, but it kind of always looks the same. You see it in the score; it reflects in his score, but you don't really see it in his actions and demeanor.
We'll watch with shot selection. You will watch the golfer who's not confident play defense in situations because the truth of it is, if you're playing poker, you can sort of fold your way around the golf course and still make a decent score.
Yeah,
and you saw that at the BMW Championship. Dustin wasn't very sharp after that virtuoso thing in Boston. I mean, 30 under par. And at Boston, I was there. I called him for half of that round that was supposed to be like 56 that turned into 60. He hit everything. Everything he was over, you could see he was trying to hit that shot. There was never a gear down. But then in the BMW in Chicago, there were situations where he was missing shots and stuff like that, and he was making smart plays. He was sort of doing the Jack Nicklaus or the Tiger Woods.
Right.
So that's a golfer who's not that confident in the physical element of the thing, but he's confident in the fact that I can gear down and still contend. And he found a way to still contend. But for a crazy putt on the playoff hole, DJ might have won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So you can see by a player's confidence by shots that they select. Now, there might be situations where the hole calls for a gear down off the tee. But if you know the driver is a dude's calling card and he's going away from that, then you know there's something up. Or if you know that the fade shot is what they go to and then he hits a few that start left and draw, then you know he's not that confident either, and you'll probably see a change. So you can see confidence in the swagger, in the shot selection, in the speed at which putts roll at the hole. The golfer is not confident, that stuff's going to be dribbling around the hole and just getting there, right? The guy who's confident, that stuff's going in like a homesick mole because he's hitting with speed. So you can sort of see if a golfer is confident by some of the shots they select and play.
I think DJ took, forget, you were probably there, like 7 putters and was trying them all out like on a Wednesday night or something. I'm not sure if he's still doing that before the tournament started. That's kind of unconventional, right, to be making that kind of selection that late in the prep?
Well, if you had to go to a PGA Tour event for a few weeks in a row, you see a number of guys that have got multiple putters on the greens. And DJ's fiddling with drivers every week. Every week he's on the range changing settings on drivers, just trying to make sure the thing never goes to the left-hand side. It's a constant adjustment.
Wow.
But to that, I must give credit to my brother, he was out on the course, I think in Memphis, and DJ had come off that horrible run where he'd shot like 18, 80, and 78.
Yeah.
And I was in a tower, and Trevor, out before the broadcast, DJ had put the original black putter back in the bag. And he had this fantastic putting day and shot something in the 60s. And Trevor said to him, DJ, I've got a question for you. And DJ's like, yeah. He goes, every time you have this thing out, you always putt well with it. Why do you ever change? And DJ's response was, I have no idea. But that sort of speaks to the golfer. Every golfer, they think that maybe a club change will be the new broom that sweeps clean. But DJ's onto something with that putter right now, so I don't think you're going to see it going anywhere. I mean, Tiger Woods is the same deal. He had the original putter, then a new putter out for the PGA Championship. There was a big brouhaha made of this thing. Didn't putt very well. Now he's got the old one back, but he's got a new grip on the thing. This is who golfers are. Now, the one thing about Woods, he's used that putter for like umpteen seasons.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You were at Eastlake for the Tour Championship all the days there?
Yeah.
Did you see him on the DJ on the range on that Sunday night before the Monday finish?
No, I don't recall seeing him there. We'd gone back to the television compound.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I did see.
Go ahead.
Final round, I'm there on 18, and Bryson DeChambeau got onto the range on Monday evening after the event.
Really?
Really?
Hit balls for about an hour,
Wow.
which was eye-opening to me. But it
Yeah.
speaks to the desire of the guy. So no, I didn't see DJ on the range personally. I saw the social media stuff of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, oftentimes with a golfer like that, that's just a wind down. You know, that's just well, I might have felt something on the golf course today that really was what I'm after. I'm trying to galvanize what I'm feeling. So sometimes that session has a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh my God, my golf swing is folding up, I'm going to try and find something.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly what the meaning was behind that, but it could have been anything.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. What's Xander's secret recipe to Eastlake, man? I mean, that guy, and which is screwy. I know we don't want to keep you all. You're not going to stay with us all day. Let me rephrase that. But since we went there, I got
open up with a drink. I'd be here for a while.
There you go.
I mean, I may be able to find something. So, I mean, that dude is like, and again, I mean, just, he's playing extremely consistent just since the return, even before the return. And I guess technically he kind of got a win at Eastlake, but he didn't get a win at Eastlake, but that guy's just a machine there. What's going on there? And how does one, it just fits his eye and it just works? I mean, what's happening?
Well, that's the thing, there really are horses for courses where a golf course sort of sets up and you feel comfortable and holes fit your shape and it's just easy on you. But I'll never forget back in 2017 when it was his first Tour Championship. I was there for PGA Tour Live and I was doing my pre-tournament reconnaissance and I was on 15 green just having a look around, and he and his caddy Austin were out there on the greens. So I wandered over to him. So I was like, well, what do you think? And his response to me was, he goes, the Zoysia fairways feel very much like home to me. He's from Southern California, where they play on Kikuyu.
Sure.
So he goes, the ball, the way the ball sits in the fairways is comfortable to me. And so his swing does well in sort of situations like that where he sweeps the ball off the turf, because Zoysia typically likes a golfer who picks the ball off the grass, where tight Bermuda, you got to dig the thing out there a little bit more. So he said the grass made him feel comfortable. And obviously the golf course shapes well for him. But he's a big time hunter. He's got something about him that when the chips are down at a big place, he'll find a way to contend. Mm-hmm. He's someone you might want to consider this week for the US Open. Mm-hmm. But his response to me was, it feels the grass felt like home, which I found curious, because everywhere off the fairways is Bermuda grass and such. Mm-hmm. Down there in Southern Cal, you got Kikuyu everywhere, and then Pioneer on the greens. Mm-hmm. But you hit a number of shots from the fairway, and so he's comfortable with that stuff.
Very cool. Yeah.
So far we've had, let's see, it's kind of weird with the way things are falling. So I want to say we've got 3 majors this year. We do have 3 majors in the year of 2020, maybe not in the season. Mm-hmm. So we've got a first time winner in Colin Morikawa for the PGA. We've got the U.S. Open this week, and then the Masters in November.
Don't think you'll see a first-time winner this week.
Yeah, okay, you don't. It's like we've been doing this all of our lives. I mean, you're reading my mind.
Well, no, it's Winged Foot. I guess the advantage for the first timer around there is the fact that no one's really seen it since 2006. Yeah. So essentially it's a new golf course to everyone. Right. So the practice round time, everyone's learning the place, because it has been changed a bit since, Phil and Tigerman played back in 06.
Sure.
But you're getting to a new golf course. So the learning time is the same. So that, I think, is the only thing they got playing in their favor. The one thing about a hard golf course at a major is you got to have a major championship mindset. And that major championship mindset is like the NFL quarterback. You got to be able to sift through all of the noise and take a few hits and still deliver the shot, the pass, the throw, the shot, whatever, when the chips are down. So Winged Foot is going to ask that. And I think Winged Foot is going to test folks emotionally and mentally as well. And so you're going to see the guys that are comfortable in that uncomfortable space come to the fore.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right, Cal. We've kept long enough. Wrap up with your
Well, he was going to go to the
question.
Masters. I cut over him over there.
Well, I figured you already knew the question.
What the Masters? Look, the Masters in November is going to be awesome.
You think it's going to play like extremely? You think that there's going to be a huge difference in it being in a spring tournament versus a fall tournament? You think that's going to weigh in either direction, or?
Yeah, wind condition wise, it will, because they're in the springtime. The winds tend out of the southeast ish. In the wintertime, here in Georgia, the winds come out of the north a little bit more and bring the cold weather down. And that makes the hole, like the first hole, straight into a northerly chilly breeze.
Yep. If
you've got the 8:15 tee time and you've got 15 from the north into you, that's a different animal. And so from that point of view, the golf course will play a little differently. Here in Georgia, typically, well, now we're getting Hurricane Sally or whatever she is.
Yeah, it's raining here. I guess probably hit you first. So.
Typically in Georgia, as you know, it's kind of dry. And so from that point of view, I think it'll make the golf course play awesome. And then they just have the situation there because it's on rye. It's on rye in the spring, and this is early in the rye season. You might see a little Bermuda in the fairway mixed in there, but it'll play very much the same. But it'll be a little harder with the northerly wind if it blows. And I think it'll be a little firmer. And firm golf courses are difficult golf courses for a PGA Tour professional. So I think it's going to be a heck of a tournament. The Encore azalea blooms twice a year. Ours are blooming right now, so you'll see some azaleas and some flowers and stuff out there.
Oh, I'm sure they've got a greenhouse. They're priming those babies. Well, remember the tornado that came through several years ago? Knocked a bunch of stuff down. Yeah, right. And the next day, they've got they're planting stuff overnight. So
that place, it's so special to me. I'm a Bob Jones fanatic, and obviously we've got great history over there. But Augusta National is just, it's a place that's like heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And there was one year, this was during tournament time, at about 2 a.m. in the morning, we have a storm that I swear is Armageddon. It was like the place was blowing up, and there were winds blowing. In the garden of the house we were staying in, there was a massive pine tree that was blown over.
Wow.
They pushed the opening time back by 30 minutes. Normally it opens at 8:30. They opened up at 9. And you wouldn't have known that anything rumbled through.
Right.
The only thing that was visible was back to the left of 11. There was a big pine tree that had been blown over. But it had been moved to a place where, unless you were looking, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
And the folks there, the maintenance staff, the superintendents, they are wizards. And it's amazing what they do around that place.
I don't want to get into any picks at the Masters yet. Hopefully, this went well for all of us, and we'll revisit prior to the Masters.
Sounds good.
So we do have an ending question we do like to ask our first timers, and it is drink related. So, Are you a G&T guy or a V&T guy?
Whew. I'll drink G&T, and I'll drink vodka and soda.
Okay, fair enough.
Nice.
It's
again. Remember my preface, the whole thing with my dad belly. I'm trying to avoid the tea as much as possible.
Gotcha. Nice.
Understood.
If you go to South Africa, a gin and tonic is one of the great safari drinks because the quinine in the tonic will keep mosquitoes away from you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's something about it. So all of the colonials, when they moved north, and if you watched movies like Out of Africa and these sorts of things, sundowners in Africa is a gin and tonic.
Oh, that's perfect. Wow.
Awesome.
Hey, Mark, before we let you go, what's your favorite wine? Is South Africa your favorite wine region? I know you're a big wine guy.
This is
the second hour. We're going to talk now about wine.
If there's South Africans listening to this, they're going to disown me, all right?
Okay.
But I'm very much into Californian wines right now. But I'll drink anything going.
Okay.
I'm not superstitious, but I love California wines. I think they're putting out some fantastic stuff there. I think it's well priced. It rivals anything in the world. But look, having some fancy Bordeaux or having a nice South African wine, it's always a treat. But right now we're living on Californians here in my house.
There you go. We were talking about Napa last week because they were there. And we're like, man, we'd love to be up there at that event. That'd be so much
Well, I
fun.
tell you what, I'm interested to see how those fires and all that ash around the place, because colleagues of mine sent pictures.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if and how, and then if this influences this harvest of grapes and what the wine will turn out like. So it's going to be interesting times coming up.
We had a blender on. I don't know if Marianne Eves. She used to work at Castle and Key, and she was a Brown foreman. Anyway, she's a whiskey gal, or bourbon, and she's kind of doing her own thing now. So she's freelancing, and she's working with some of the vineyards out there. And actually, because of the smoke, I'm going to use the word, it tainted some of the grapes. So they're taking those grapes. And she's making, brandies and, some different liqueurs with the smoked grapes because instead of trashing them, I mean, you can't give. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out.
Necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it?
Exactly.
Don't you love the human race? We'll find a way.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on, man. I've enjoyed it. I'll make sure you got a drink the next time. That way, we're not rushing off this thing. But
I'm interested, Carl, in your product placement in the front there. That's Stone what?
Yeah. So it is. It's Stone Smoked Porter. It's a San Diego brewery. Usually we have a drink every time we record, and I'm always doing something different. Just given the time of day, I thought I'd go with a breakfast stout. So, it's like watching the Open, man. I mean, you get wine first thing in the morning, So
hey, let's if we do another one of these things in the near future, please let's do this at like wine time for me.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Cool.
Easy enough, sir.
You might get different answers.
Yeah. Looking forward to it, Mark. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, guys. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.